to be able to share looking up.
All righty. So if you will, just go ahead to my page and you should be able to share.
Gotcha.
Got it?
There we go.
Yep,
Okay.
got it.
Awesome.
Okay.
I'm going to my own page. All right, here we go. All right, good evening, everybody. We are here again doing live with our COVID conversation. And so I am excited to have you join in with me tonight, wherever you are joining in from. And if you are joining in for this COVID conversation part 2, you may have been with us the first time, I think about a month ago, we did COVID conversation. And so I invite you to share this page with on your social media platform. We want to make sure we share information with as many people as possible. I am pleased and honored tonight to be able to share this opportunity with 2 very dear friends of mine, which I have had the opportunity to get to know. And one I've known a long time, and the other I have the opportunity of working with currently in some efforts. And so I'm going to introduce tonight Bishop-elect Troy Sanders, pastor of Rehoboth Fellowship in Atlanta, and also my very dear longtime friend, former pastor buddy and colleague and partner in crime, Reverend D. Dawkins Hagler. Yes, you guys recognize that face. This is the mouth of CNN, baby. She lets them have it on CNN. Yes, this is the one and only. And so, my friends, I'm glad to have you guys join with me tonight. You guys want to introduce yourselves? I don't care who goes first.
Okay, but it's not CNN. It's Fox News. It's Newsmax. It's News Nation. It's RT America. It's any place where the Republicans are the majority. What I found out, I love MSNBC and CNN, but that's just singing to the choir. I like to go in the lion's den. I take it straight to them because I know they watch it, so I can give it to them every single chance I get. So I'm D. Dawkins Hagler, served almost 9 years in the Georgia General Assembly, served as the chair of the Black Caucus, the Women's Caucus, and this is my friend. So thank you, Reverend Doctor, for having me today. He already know that I'm usually not on my best behavior, but you would never want to sit by 2 of us in any setting, church, education, I don't care what it is, because you know, it is what it is. We're going to have fun and enjoy each other. But thank you so much, sir. I appreciate all that you're doing. You're doing a yeoman's job educating our young people. So I thank you for that, because that is a calling in and of itself.
Thank you so much.
And I too echo that. Thank you so much, Reverend Doctor, for inviting us. A brother and a friend who is working with us with the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries. I kind of wear 2 hats tonight. First, I am the founding pastor of a new church plant in the United Church of Christ, the Southeast Conference. We're 5 years old now, Rehoboth Fellowship of Atlanta, UCC. And I'm also one of the bishop-elects for the Fellowship of Affirming Ministries under Bishop Yvette Flunder, a ministry that I have been a part of for now close to over 15 years. And one of the things that excites me about this conversation is the opportunity to marry 21st century ministry with pulpit ministry, and reframe and rebrand prophetic ministry, not getting into people's business, but learning how to speak in truth to power. So I am among good company tonight, and I am grateful for the invitation.
I tell you, this is going to be a good one already. The synergy and the energy is already flowing. And Pastor Troy, let me just tell you, it's always trouble when Dr. D and I get together.
Got it. Good trouble, right? Good trouble.
This is good trouble. Thank you
like
very
John
much.
Lewis said, Congressman Lewis said, good trouble.
Good trouble.
Definitely good trouble. And so to those that are watching us tonight, just know it's going to be good trouble, good information, good sharing, and open dialogue. Listen, when I was asked to do this, and I tell everybody when Elder Ruetta Best asked me to do this, I told her, she asked my perspective, and I said, I think this is a wonderful opportunity. Bishop Troy, we were in our conversation with Bishop Flunder, and she had asked about me doing something with technology. And then this came along like the next week. And so I told Elder Best that my perception is that it was time for us to bring faith and facts together. And this is a wonderful opportunity to bring faith and facts, make the marriage together. I think we hear facts in one segment, and then we get all the faith, charismata, and all that other stuff. And sometimes we get the charismata and we don't get any facts. And so it's good to shout, but have something to shout about.
Yes.
And so I see this as an opportunity for us to share faith and facts together. And so I thank both of you again for taking the time to do this. Let's dive right in. And don't forget, for those that are on Facebook and other social media platforms, feel free to post your questions in the chat. We will see your questions, and we will get an opportunity to answer your questions as we're going through this presentation, this sharing tonight. So please feel free to post your questions as we are going through, and I promise we'll stop and try to get to all of your questions. Now, tonight, we do not have our medical doctor, Dr. McKinney. She's a doctor. Something came up. I understand, but that's not a problem. Trust me, between the three of us, I do believe there's enough energy here to fill up the whole hour, and we'll be just fine. And so we'll answer medical questions from what we know, and we won't try and make up a response because we're not medically trained doctors. Okay. So we're just gonna put that out there. That's our disclaimer tonight. We can tell you what we know, but we cannot answer any medically specific questions. If you had medical specific questions, I cannot answer those tonight because I'm a doctor, she's a doctor, but we're not medical doctors. Okay. Correct. And so we want to be clear on that. We are not medical doctors. Dr. McKinney cannot be with us tonight. And again, we want to thank Bishop O.C. Allen, who was going to be with us tonight. Something came up with him as well. And so we're going to move on, and we will just continue the conversation right where we are. Amen. All right. Let me ask this question. What has, because all of us come from different perspectives and different areas of ministry. And I know Pastor D, Dr. D over here tried to tell me, well, I'm not a pastor anymore. But once a pastor, always a pastor. Whether you pastor a physical building or not, you pastor people. And I know you have a heart for people, and you're still pastoring people in your own way. But for both of you, what has been your experience as a leader in the faith community over this past year, throughout this pandemic? And how would you describe this past year for you as a pastor, as a faith leader? How would you explain this year for you? You guys, whoever jumps in first. Pastor Troy, you smiling good.
Well, what I can say is, first off, we also share, as we were talking before the broadcast, we share another commonality, and that is our seminary training. And we appreciate all of the things that the great ITC has deposited in us. But I have to tell you that there is not one class I sat in that adequately prepared me for the totality of what this past year has brought. These type of, I'm sure from this point on, seminary learning will have to include crisis and pandemic management, but it certainly did not do that before now. And just on my timeline over the last week, I saw we just rounded the corner of being 1 full year in virtual worship only. We started our first virtual worship service the third Sunday in March in 2020. I think it's 2021 now. I have to remind myself. And what we thought would have been a small amount of time, I can tell you, first of all, very soberly, that the amount of grief and the amount of pain and being present with people has taken the front seat to anything that I could do theologically. What I can tell you is that I feel best prepared for where I am and having to pastor through my CPE process. The process of just being able to be present with people in the midst of suffering, right? On the humorous side of that, my resume has increased because now I can add producer, show producer. I never thought I would be doing. I could add technology. I know most of these platforms in terms of streaming and dual streaming and Zoom and all of that. So I thought to myself, I might be able to get another job after this because there are things on my resume now that I just never would have imagined to have to manage. And to pastor people through crisis is a unique gift.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Pastor D.
And so I totally agree with Bishop Elay, because let me tell you something, Bishop Troy. I never thought that I would be doing so much grief counseling in my life. I mean, of course, we would have funerals before, people would die, but not to this magnitude. I mean, it's quite alarming. Even the amount of counseling we do now for depression alone, it has skyrocketed. So I spend more time now talking to women who are at home in abusive relationships, whereas during the day, they were accustomed to the abuser being away from home, and even with children who were accustomed to the abuser being away during the day, and they were at school. So that was the time they had a little bit of peace, a little bit of, protection and safety, was those hours that abusers were not in the presence of the victims. And so it's just alarming that we have had to add this ministry to already that we thought we learned in CPE classes, because I thought I knew something, but obviously I did not. And so we just had to learn how to adjust, which also shows that we are resilient people, because we turned on a dime. I mean, look at us. I mean, we doing StreamYard right now, but we doing it, sharing it through Facebook, through all of our pages. And so technology has gone a long way, but that still does not negate the fact that we have had to be full-time counselors now, even if you didn't even have a CPE core. Well, you had to at ITC a little something. Right. We're full-time counselors now. I mean, that's what we are. And then we got to make sure we take care of our own selves. And now I'm trying to find me a therapist. So if y'all know of one that's a good one, put it in the box so I can have somebody to talk to, because a lot of times the Black church has steered people away from getting mental health counseling or someone just to talk to. And that's detrimental and dangerous by itself. But now I've been doing all this talking to people. I need somebody now that I can talk to and unload on. So put somebody, if you know of a good therapist, I mean, not your cousin, so somebody that just, bootleg. I'm talking about somebody who's trained, have credentials. Right. Please, because I need somebody to talk to.
And I understand, because I remember my time at ITC and the days that I spent personally on the sofa of Dr. Carolyn McCrary. And I thank God for Dr. Carolyn McCrary. And now I find myself having to use what I learned from Dr. McCrary on myself, because even as a pastor, as a church leader, I have found myself having to every now and then encourage myself, having to have conversations with myself and to talk myself out of the pit, because I'm seeing grief so many places. having loved ones of my own to pass away, that I'm not even allowed to go to their celebration of life because I'm currently living in Maryland, they're in New Jersey or wherever. And so I find myself sometimes having to talk to myself and pull myself. So I encourage every pastor, make sure you get a group of pastors that understand and who are trained enough, and not some folks that's just going to quote and regurgitate some Bible verses, but folks that's going to let you talk and be you and talk through your stuff. And I think that has been helpful for me, is just knowing I have some positive connection with people, because that's where I've been having to do pastoral care myself. And it's kind of looking crazy laying on my couch, talking to myself, asking myself questions and waiting for self to answer the questions that Dr. McCrary gave me, or Dr. Ed Wimberly, and so I thank God for that training. And now, as you said earlier, I see me employing all of those skills now, but in a whole nother way. And I teach technology in public schools, but never before did I think I was going to have to be the one being, as you said, being the producer, being the sound man, the lighting engineer, doing all these things. I'm teaching kids how to do it in the classroom. And here it is. Dr. Arnett has had to start doing it at home for the church and for everybody else. And so you're right. We have crossed a year. It was March 15th was our last service in the building. March 15th was the last service that I held in the building. And then I've been virtual ever since. And so it has been tedious. It songs is how tedious and tasteless the hour. And this has been a tedious and tasteless hour that has extended a whole year. Yes.
I'm sorry. Something you said that brought up something in me. We also have had to renegotiate and renavigate the grief ritual, right? And in Black culture, particularly Southern Black culture, the grief ritual is very important. How you bury a person often reflects in a lot of communities whether you love the person or not. And this pandemic has had to turn that on its head. Like, it's not about whether we loved our loved ones or not. It's about what's safe for us. So, yes. And we've heard, throughout seminary that religion is the opiate of the people. And we know that religion have people on high. But what happens when they are detoxing and can't get to that place to get another fix? Right. You got to sit with detox people too. So this has really had several tentacles. Yes. I think it has stirred up some awareness around our mental health for all of us.
Yes, that's definitely true. And it's something we can't ignore. That mental health piece is definitely something we cannot ignore. If we could reset time, if we could reset time, or I wish we did have a replay button. What could we have done differently? What do you think we could have done differently now that we're on the other side of this pandemic? What do you think we should have done differently?
Is this in relates to COVID or just in general?
With regard to the pandemic itself, COVID pandemic itself, what do you think we could have done differently?
Well, first of all, had we elected Hillary Rodham Clinton as the president, then Donald Trump would not have unleashed his terror and neglect of the COVID virus on the American people. And so his lack of response, and even though he had a COVID response team, but their lack of response and taking this serious caused us to be in the predicament that we are in now. Because had this country just shut it all down, just shut it down for a good 2-3 weeks, then we would not be at this place, because we would have stopped the flow and the spread of the virus. Not probably completely, but we would have slowed it down tremendously. So what we got to talk real. Elections have consequences. So that's the first thing we have to be realistic and talk about. Elections have consequences. And thank God that Georgia showed up and sent 2 Democrats to the Senate, because if not, we wouldn't even have this last level of COVID relief that just hit people's accounts and vaccines rolling out the way they're rolling out. So we cannot, even though we want to be apolitical, we cannot. The truth is, Black folk, you need to vote every time in every election. Don't tell me anything about your religion, because we would not be where we are right now had the right people been in office. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
Reverend D, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I often find myself thinking, how would this pandemic have looked differently if Donald Trump had not made it to the presidency? the ways in which we could have certainly been spared as a nation and spared as a people that are already disproportionately affected by anything. I wonder from a political perspective, but also from a preacher, a theological perspective, how would we have done differently if we had not put so much emphasis on going to church and church attendance being a part of our salvation? Like I wonder, like so many breakouts and outbreaks happened because we did not heed the call to shut down. And Reverend D, just like the country, there are churches, I mean, we have to be truthful, that never shut down. And what does that say about our theological practice? That there's something that we've disconnected that will not make us responsible as pastors and leaders to keep bringing folk to church. That makes no sense to me.
That's right. That's right. And we have to wonder, where is God in all of this? You know, where do we see God in all of this? Theology is everywhere. We can make theology about anything, about a cat, dog, if you want to, but theology at the ultimate end of the day is the study of God. And God is still going to be who God is. But where do we see God in all of this pandemic? Because as Pastor Troy has already said, this is not devoid of church. Church has some responsibility in this. We have to own our place in this. We have to own our responsibility as faith leaders. But where do we see God in this pandemic?
And I agree with everything that Pastor Troy just said. Bishop Troy, when you said that the church, the responsibility, the onus is on those who God has called to lead, has to be responsible. And we don't want to say it, but we have been irresponsible. And a lot of church people do not trust the science. And I'm trying to understand what is going on. And mostly it is the evangelicals who do not trust the science. And the Pentecostals don't trust the science. Yeah. They say, God got me. But God also gave us common sense and free will to understand that he equipped and trained those same people who are doctors and scientists. And so, I mean, I think it's just crazy, you know, that we didn't trust it. And then we put our people in peril. Because a lot of people caught COVID at church.
That's right.
I'm just going to be honest, they called it at church or church functions, but they keep saying, oh, God got me. Yeah, God has us all in God's hands. But the truth of the matter is, God, we're not supposed to be ignorant of science. I mean, it's a reason that there were pandemics. It's because pandemics spread. That's what they do. They spread, and we need to stop the spread. I mean, you know.
I always say God is science. You know, I don't understand how we can be in the faith community and say we don't believe in science when at the core of science is God. God is the heart of science. And we just I tell people science is the mind of God. And what we're doing through our scientific practices, we're trying to figure out the mind of God, which we'll never do. That's why we always come up with more theories, because we can never figure out the mind of God. And like you said, and the fact that we have to own the fact that a lot of what we have seen, and we're going to talk about in just a minute, is that we as faith leaders ignored the facts that were brought to us because we said the Holy Ghost is going to tell us. But the Holy Ghost also speaks through people.
And denial is still an unhealthy coping mechanism.
Yes.
And the Black church has majored in denial for years. Yes. Not just denial around health disparities, but denial around LGBTQI people and the ways in which we are all a part of the family, the kingdom of God. Denial about women's role in ministry. Just a number of things. We have been on the back line of a number of hot button issues because we choose the drug of denial.
That's right. Yeah, it's been our coping mechanism, and it's also been the cause of our demise and our destruction, because we are in denial about so many things. So,
or condemnation and judgment.
Well, yes.
Because they'll say you don't have any faith, and because you don't have any faith, this is why you're letting COVID rule the day. And so, so I'm, both denial and judgment. And I keep saying, okay, well, you can judge me all you want, but you could be dead, and I end up the very careful person that I am. But we'll talk about that later. Getting COVID myself, but that's a whole nother story. Oh my God.
That's right, because Pastor D just recently, within the last few weeks, was released from the hospital because I watched her daily COVID updates, and so I have that's why I'm glad she's here tonight. And I wanted her on here because she's also talking to us not from the perspective of a politician, but she is also talking from the bed, from the hospital bed, as one who has recovered from COVID. And we were a part of, thank God she allowed us as part of her healing process by giving us daily updates. And Pastor D, I want to say thank you because when I see you now and see how you persevered each day, and this is for everyone, there were days she could barely catch a breath, but she intentionally got on Facebook Live. Even when Facebook deleted all her videos, they shut her down.
Wow.
Her videos were shut down.
Yeah. The truth.
And that's right. Her videos were removed. And she spoke every day to encourage us through her process and through her healing. And so I'm grateful to her for inviting us into her healing process. And it's just good to see her here and back being herself. She is a survivor. In fact, my mother just put in the chat, she is a survivor, and she definitely is a survivor. And so I'm glad about that. And so we've talked around it. We've talked around the Black church and its role in politics. Black church historically has had an active place in the forefront of social justice movements, and has always served as a major platform in political matters, especially as pertain to our communities. So how would you assess, and we've touched on this, the role of the Black church throughout this pandemic, especially as regard to being a continuous or consistent platform for political facts? Have we done a good job? That would be a no.
Bishop, you go ahead. You.
I think that as a church, as a Black church, there is a lot.
You're talking church as a whole.
I'm talking both. Fortunately, I have been a member of the Black church for most of my life, right? Mm-hmm. And there are ways in which the Black church is in tandem with the church at large, but I think there's also ways in which the Black church's plight makes us a bit more sensitive, or should make us a bit more sensitive. But I don't know that we've stepped up to the plate in the ways in which I would have wished we could have. The voice of the Black church carries weight in the Black community. And I think that if many of our Black leaders, Black church leaders, would have been on the forefront to say, y'all, we got to shut these churches down, or been on the forefront to say we've got to practice social distance, and not allow financial bottom lines to determine what we do, when we do it, and when we return. Because I honestly believe that many of the determinations and decisions were not made in concert with public health advisors and public health scientists, because they were made with the protective bottom line of church buildings that lay empty, that still had mortgages that needed to be paid, and other things. And I think those things drove decision making. And I'm not denying that, but I'm saying when you put people's lives at risk for the sake of business, we see what that has done to our country. So I do think that there are many ways that I believe, and I still think there's time, if Black leaders would stand up and say, y'all, we've got to do a better job at embracing this vaccination and lead by example. It only takes one person, one loved one, or yourself to have gone through COVID to realize that any side effect I get regarding this vaccination is not worthy to be compared to the kind of damage that having this COVID virus can do to you. I mean, at the end of the day, the truth is, I would rather have side effects dealing with the vaccine than to have to be put on a ventilator because I have caught a virus that my body just can't fight off. I mean, in my mind, it's apples and oranges. But I think that as a church, we have to grab a hold. We have been behind the scenes, and we have to speak truth to this nonsense when people hijack Pentecostalism and evangelism and evangelicalism and start praying for African angels and nonsense. We got to do a better job of calling people to the carpet and saying this is foolishness. Yeah. If all you try to do is get to church to dance, put a praise track on in your house and dance at home safely. But that cannot be the sum total of our faith practice.
Yeah. Pastor D.
But the African angels did come.
They did show up, baby. They showed up at the polls.
They just didn't come on the side that the one who called them thought they were going to come.
No,
they did.
Them African angels showed up at them election polls. They dropped some ballots, baby. And I say thank you to all the African angels.
You better be careful who you call. When you come, you better know what you're conjuring.
They showed up.
I'm trying to tell you.
They showed up.
But I wholeheartedly hear what you're saying. And you're right. I wish, from a personal standpoint, I wish we heard more from our mainline Black denominational leaders. I know there have been some of us grassroots leaders out there doing what we can do. We've been out there in our own circles of influence, influencing those that we know, our hundreds and maybe some of our thousands of social media friends. But the impact that could have been done if our major Black denominational leaders had been more vocal and been more forthright in addressing this even if the White House did not, even if the White House did not speak about it, I think we had the onus and the responsibility to speak for ours. And for those that are part of our denominations, to tell them, hey, this is what we have to do because it's about us and we got to be worried about saving our lives. So I definitely see, I would have to agree, we missed the ball. We missed something in this pandemic as Black faith leaders. We missed something. And now we're on the other side of it, and we're on the a bad side of it. We're on the sad side of it now. Yes, Pastor D.
And we still have the opportunity to get it right, because for some reason people think COVID is over because some vaccines have been administered, knowing that only 10% of this population has actually been vaccinated. And it does not keep you from getting COVID. It just is going to help you from not, being hospitalized or possibly dying. But COVID, in certain places and areas, they are actually having an increase of cases.
That's right.
And this is why in Miami, the mayor was like, let me just shut it down. Y'all on curfew because you don't know how to conduct yourselves. You don't know how to act. And I have friends now who are still going to the clubs and parties and try to get me to go out Saturday and Sunday night. Did you come on, go to the jazz club? Let me just be very clear. I do have the antibodies in my system right now because when I just had COVID and I had monoclonal antibodies put in, injected through the IVs, and I also had plasma. So I am, the likelihood that I will get COVID is very unlikely right now. But I'm still not going to the jazz club, and I'm also not going to sit in church with you all either, because I personally, I might even a year from now still might be wearing a mask because I don't really want y'all breathing on me now that I see how, the projectile is when saliva coming all out. And so you think I want to go to a club or church because they both equally have saliva coming out, juices flowing all over the place and all this stuff? No. And so I think we need to do a better job educating the masses that it's not over, because people not saying I just go everywhere I want to go, do whatever I want to do. And that's irresponsible. It's irresponsible until we have some type of herd immunity going on. And we do not have it right now because 10% is not anywhere near herd immunity. So we got to do better.
Am I correct? Didn't they say that herd immunity is about 80% of the population?
Yes, and we are at 10% right now. About 10% of the population. I mean,
so we're only about 10% of the population
not there until we start immunizing children, young people. I mean, whole bunch of people have to be immunized before we're going to be, in the clear. And so I'm going to be one of those people who are going to continue to mask up. And the crazy thing is I was a double masker, and I was forever using hand sanitizer, and even fought Brian Kemp last year when he was trying to come against Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and the Atlanta City Council. I was the main one who led the stuff down to the Capitol, saying, no, you should absolutely mandate masks and keep things shut down, because I thought it was very important that we wear masks and be careful and social distance and everything else. And I still got COVID because we still really don't know what's going on with this. Airborne, whatever, and how can it really get to you? And I mean, maybe because sometimes our masks don't go all the way right here.
That's right.
I don't know what's coming through the side. I don't know, but I got COVID, and I'm very careful. So I'm just saying, whew, child.
Yeah, and we have to be very transparent about what's really going on. And you're right. When I saw the images of Miami Beach, South Beach over the weekend, it's like, what are we really thinking? I was sharing with just a colleague of mine earlier today that the heart of people has really waxed cold when we're worried about, I have a right to not wear a mask, but in your expression of your right to not wear a mask, you're also subjecting all those that you come in contact with anything that you carry. And so it's so irresponsible and selfish. It's very selfish to me. And I think we have to, as Pastor Troy was saying, Bishop was saying earlier, we have to just call it what it is. We have just been selfish when our keeping the doors open at full mast it is driving. We just want the offering. Let's be clear. It's been about money, because the same way you share in the word, like we've been doing this over via the internet for a year. Nothing stopped you from doing preaching and teaching people through technology. And the same way the Spirit moves in the building, the Spirit can move at the house.
Sure can.
And Miami is not the only culprit, right?
No.
I have watched major and smaller and larger church gatherings, church conferences. They're unmasked, not masked the first, but they're gathering together to consecrate, ordain, convocate, all of those. I mean, I'm trying to tell you, one of the hardest decisions that we had to do as a movement for the fellowship is to have real accountability conversations to say, we are going to cancel our national meetings, postpone our national meetings in the interest of everyone's safety. And lastly, I'll say this, is that it for me, it has not all been about my safety. I have elderly loved ones, family members. I couldn't get a pass and not get it, but take it back and kill somebody in my family.
Exactly.
I just don't want to take that risk in the name of religion. I'm free. I'm praying and prophesying, but now I've become this carrier for some elderly loved one that I'm in community with. I just couldn't take that risk.
And that has been my reality, because even when I personally wrestled with getting vaccinated, so I got the first shot, I get the second shot on this coming Wednesday. But what was at work in my mind was, I have a nearly 70-year-old mother who only has one child. That's me.
Okay.
I have cousins who have lupus, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, all in my. I said, and I love my family. I would not want to be the one who, because I was hopping on a plane going to, as you said, all these consecrations, all these ordinations, and all these national conventions, and then I bring something home to my mother, to that little 4-year-old boy that I love dearly named Julian, to my cousins. I wouldn't want to be the carrier to bring it back. And because I have a strong immune system and they do not, I wouldn't want to be the one to be to deposit something on them. I have a friend just recently who was, thank God she got out of hospital last week, but she got it from her mother, who was out doing social things, bars and all the other stuff. And now she has been with double pneumonia and COVID because she got it. So I wouldn't want to be that person. And so that is one of the things that has motivated me and said, no, you got to do this. When I went in the military, they didn't ask me if I wanted to be vaccinated or inoculated. They didn't ask me in the military. They said, here's your health card. Walk down this hallway and stop at each station. And they injected some vaccine in my arm, and I couldn't ask. There was no questions to be asked. They said, these are what you need. You're serving in the military. This is what you're going to get. And so I had to put that mentality back on, that it was for a greater good. It's beyond me, but it's for those that I love as well. And I think we have to start thinking back and putting people that we love back on at the forefront of our thoughts and our actions as leaders. Beyond money, family matters. Beyond money, family matters, and we have to remember that. And so I definitely appreciate you for sharing in that. I want to share this especially with our audience. Looking up some information from the CDC says there have been nearly 30 million COVID-19 cases in the United States over the past year, 543 deaths. And that 543 is an increase of 43,000 from the last time we had our COVID session. But last time I did the COVID conversation, we had just hit the 500,000 mark. And now over the last year, more than 1 million of the COVID cases across this country have been in the state of Georgia alone. And of those, 18,000 people have died in Georgia as it related to COVID infections in 1 year. In 1 year, the number of deaths related to this pandemic have surpassed the deaths from years of military combat. In 1 year, we've lost more people to this pandemic than we did in all of the wars together. And it's a fact, and this is for those who don't know, but this is a fact: Black and Indigenous people have died at more alarming rates than any other racial group. And this is where I want to pose my question. Why do we presume that is? Why do you think that it's been us that has succumbed to this virus so in such alarming rates?
Because we have other pre-existing conditions, those comorbidities that we had prior to that. So I think one of the reasons that I even suffered more than, so say for instance, my husband, is because I have asthma. But in addition to asthma, I'm a breast cancer survivor. And with that, I had radiation all through my chest. And so maybe the pneumonia came at me, harder COVID pneumonia because of the issues I had prior to that. But I also had good healthcare, access to quality healthcare. So someone who might have been in the same predicament with me, with livelihood of living, would have been very slim to none. Do you understand? Because I immediately was able to go to the hospital and get quality care. Many times Black people or people of color, they live in areas where they don't have access to care or they can't afford it. And therefore, we are always at the bottom spectrum, especially in the South, because in the South, we have high blood pressure, we have diabetes, we have heart disease that go untreated for long periods of time, sickle cell, lupus. I mean, you just think about all the things that Black people experience, and not because we are inferior or our genes are weaker, it's just that we don't have the access to quality affordable health care. Or when we do have access to health care, they do not listen to us or they don't treat us as equals. And so they'll send us home when they know we need to be hospitalized, or they will not give us the amount of medicine we need because they think we cannot afford it. So we still have to deal with the disproportionate treatment of Black people in America and white privilege, which we don't want to talk about, so white supremacy and why Black people suffer and die more than others.
I totally agree. And I also think it's that age-old premise that when America catches a cold, our communities have pneumonia, the flu. Like it's exponentially greater because of all of this. I have the blessed privilege of pastoring in the context of predominantly LGBTQI people of color. Also in that same target group, we have a higher propensity toward heart disease, toward diabetes, HIV and AIDS, and all of these other comorbidities that put us at risk at greater measures. And then on top of that, the other reality, Reverend D, to that component is that most of the kind of jobs that our people have, We didn't have the luxury to remain working at home or remotely. We didn't have when those companies opened back up, it was our people, Black people and brown people and indigenous people that had to go back on those frontline jobs that were interfacing with these white Republicans who refused to wear masks. And we were trying to make a living for our families. So we had to be at work, but we also had to succumb and suffer from people who made a conscious choice to be irresponsible. And so I think all of these created the perfect storm, which has been brewing in our communities over years. The only thing we saw play out now is what has been playing out under the surface for quite some time. I've also been the supply clergy person for a number of funeral homes in the Atlanta area, because the older clergy persons that typically do funerals for people who are not necessarily connected to local congregations are elderly people who could not come out. And I can tell you that number you gave is real. I have done more funerals in this last year than I have done in the last 25 years of my ministry.
And that's real talk.
Yeah,
that's just the truth. The truth. And most of those services have been of a certain economic status and for families of victims that are Black and brown. That's in Georgia. And the truth is, even down to the way in which we get access to care. You're absolutely right. The way in which we demonize, Mother so-and-so can come to church. And I've heard Dr. Edith Bigger say this the first time, and I give her a shout out. She said, the church is the first place we will glorify and honor certain illnesses. Mother so-and-so with heart disease can be ushered up to the front, and rightfully so. Deacon so-and-so with diabetes, when he comes into church, he gets a seat of honor. But someone with HIV and AIDS, when they come into the church, they get put on the back row and shunned and said it's because of behavior. Well, the truth is, all of those diseases have some behavioral connections to it, but the church has in some way lifted up certain behaviors and blessed certain illnesses. And then I have family members and friends to this day who either died of COVID or were sick of COVID. And you know what they said? Don't tell nobody I got it.
But you don't understand. I don't even understand.
It ain't like you did nothing wrong, but there is still shame to even being able to name that I am COVID positive in this day and age. And it is the
stigmatized
same thing.
COVID now.
We've stigmatized HIV and AIDS the same exact way. Don't tell nobody I got it, as if there is some problem with being COVID positive.
You're telling the truth. And when I came out and told everybody I had COVID, and I did it on purpose for that reason, then I had people texting me. People in my inbox, I had COVID, but I didn't want to tell anybody, but you set me free. I was like, what in the devil is going on? What? I mean, it's COVID. It is a sickness. I mean, it's COVID. All of these are illnesses and sicknesses. I mean, I don't understand Black people.
I don't understand how we have,
don't understand.
Because I experienced that. And it was a threat, very verbally threatening. Don't tell nobody that this was the diagnosis. Don't tell nobody. And it was like, I don't know why we're keeping it a secret that this is the situation, that she came down with COVID and now she's dead.
It's COVID.
But it was made such a bad thing. So we were banned or forbidden to tell people that this person died of COVID because they didn't want nobody to know. Why?
She got the COVID. He got the COVID.
Yes. He got he got the COVID. I always tell her, and this is just a funny. I remember some years ago I was singing in a choir, and I had a lady in the choir, and she was praying for the choir. And she said, "Lord, bless all the people that got the AIDS." And I laughed when she was praying, because she said the people that got the AIDS. I guess now we're gonna say, Lord, bless the people that got the COVID. Because it's gonna be something we don't want to touch, the COVID. And I think we have to move beyond our archaic way of thinking. It's not even Old Testament thinking. We have an archaic way of thinking and making everything demonic in our community. The vaccine is demonic. The COVID is demonic. Everything is demonic. But some of the stuff we do on Sunday morning in our Sunday gatherings has been demonic, and we cherish those things. And so we have to How do we push the community of faith to the next level? I guess that's the next one. How do we push our communities to the next level? Because there's a next level of accountability. I don't believe, the song says, I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. I don't believe God has allowed us to come this far, a year into this pandemic, for us to not have learned something or have something to transform ourselves from. We have to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, but are we being transformed? You know, so that's a question we have to ask from a church theological perspective. Are we really being transformed? And how do we go to the next level, to this next dimension of spiritual accountability? Because God is holding us faith leaders accountable for every person, every soul that died of the COVID, that we caused because of our irresponsibility and because of our selfishness and our greed. I believe God is holding, God is going to, I know God is going to hold us accountable because we were irresponsible with the mantle that God gave us, the anointing God gave us, we've been irresponsible. So how do you think we need to go forth and push us to the next level? Because there's some accountability.
It requires what the three of us are doing right now. The more we speak on it, the more we speak truth to power, the more we are transparent, the more we don't try to hide behind religion, because God is love. And so the mere fact that people try to separate us out, we are all made in the image and likeness of God, and we have to push each other. And really, we have to push back and call people out when they are being prejudiced or condemning people or judgment or bigotry, whatever it is. We have to be the ones to speak against it, and it's not cute. And so sometimes we hear, so we can't be that. No. It's time out for all that foolishness. We got to be who we are and speak to that situation. And one more thing, if my computer cut off, that's because my battery is low and it's upstairs. And I just want y'all to know, just in case I cut off, I love y'all.
I love you too. Yes.
Okay, so
I don't know you, but I love you. Ain't that what we say?
I told you we just talk like it is.
I looked down and it said you had less than like 20 minutes. That was 10 minutes ago. So I just want y'all to know.
I appreciate it, because we're gonna wrap up in a few minutes anyway. We're gonna push it in. So Pastor Joy, how do you what would you add to that in terms of us pushing the church and our communities to the next level of accountability?
I think there's both a macro response and a micro response, right? My micro response is that's the reason I got the vaccination and was public about it. Both shots. I put it on Facebook. We put everything else on Facebook. Let me put that on Facebook. One, because I want to lead by example as a pastor and as a leader. The other thing, in a bigger context, as a pastor of a church, what we did when this pandemic first started and we went into virtual worship is we took the Wednesday, the weekly midweek service, that Bible study night, and turn that into an open forum so that people can build community and get their mental health needs met. So we partnered with health professionals, mental health professionals, and public health scientists to get the truth out so that people can make educated decisions. And then I think in a grander scale, we have to put information out there and put feet to our prayers.
Yes.
I have seen more invitations to attend virtual prayer conferences and prayer calls. And we have had a Sunday morning prayer call for the last 6 years at our church. But there is more to it than just praying. We got to get people information like situations like this. And when we hear erroneous, false information, we have to call people on the carpet loud and clear. Don't pacify it and don't secondhand it. Don't act like you're trying to be buddy with it. Call it out. That's a lie.
The truth is just the truth.
Absolutely lie. Exactly.
That's right.
When I hear of those omens say, so-and-so died because they got the vaccination, I said, that's a lie. And that has been proven to be a lie. Where you get your information from? Well, they got tracking pieces in the vaccination. I said, that's a lie. They got tracking in your phone and you keep that to your ear every single day. You ain't worried about no tracking, because if you worry about tracking, you would come off of all this social media stuff. So we got to call a lie a lie. And when we do that, I think we create change.
People got COVID from 5G, 3, whatever.
That's okay. Pastor D, I have a comment out here that says, "Run, get your charger, mother, because I'm enjoying you." So, so they said, "Mother, please go get your charger because I'm enjoying you." So they don't want you to die.
Okay. I'm sorry.
That's the comment. I'm just reading it like it is. Run, get your charger, mother. Enjoying you. So mother, go run and get your charger.
I'm gonna go get my charger just for y'all. Just for y'all. I'm gonna go get this charger. Oh, that's
and that is the epitome of the Black experience. Only us as Black folk can say it like that, right? That's how we communicate. Yes,
exactly. And it means something because it's heartfelt. And and talk about that chip thing. I had this discussion with someone, and I had to tell them we have to stop thinking that the vaccine, there's no microchip in the vaccine. I said, we've been carrying the microchip for years. I said, did you not realize the government mandated that everybody gets this new form of driver's license? Yeah. That new driver's license is embedded with the microchip that reads all your personal information. If you look on the back, there's a barcode. They can scan that barcode and tell everything about you because it's all embedded in your driver's license. It didn't dawn on me till a few months ago. I flew to Detroit and I'm going through the airport. And this is no lie. We're going to the airport and I'm looking for my boarding pass to give to the man. And he says, "Oh, don't worry, don't worry, Dr. Arnett. I already got your information. I just scanned your driver's license." "What do you mean?" He said, "Oh, I just scanned your driver's license. So I already know you're clear. Go through." Because it's in your driver's license, the chip. So, we have to get beyond all of these. If we didn't learn anything else this past year, the amount of conspiracy theories that have invaded our communities and have really destroyed our thinking, we have to contend with those. We need to, like I said, we need to call that stuff out because they are conspiracy theories.
In seminary, we were taught that it is a hermeneutic of suspense, and Black folk are prone to embracing a hermeneutic of suspense. We'd rather be suspicious about it before we embrace it. That's just our first nature, and we have to address that. People are dying.
Yes, and as I shared, at alarming rates, they're dying quickly.
I've never lived through an experience in my entire life where I've seen so many people die at one time.
Yeah. Yes. And I pray I never have to.
Pray I never experience it again. I agree.
Even as a school teacher by profession, this is the reality that we're dealing with even in the school system. We just had one of my coworkers share today that a student told her on Friday, "Oh, yeah, I'm just getting over COVID, but I'll see you Monday." Well, the panic hit this teacher because now this little girl's going to be sitting in my classroom. Who cleared her medically to say she can come back to the school? And she got it because, as you said earlier, her parents are city workers. So they are on the front line. And guess what? They brought it home to their children. And so this is the reality that we're living in. And it's incumbent upon us as church leaders, community leaders, political leaders, whatever it is. We got to start talking about this thing more than just dancing around it. We can't keep shouting. You can't keep shouting and ignoring the truth. And I think that's what we've done too long in the Black church. We've been dancing around this thing. We've been dancing around real facts. One time I'm gonna have one about this Black Lives Matter thing. We're gonna have a discussion about that, and we're gonna see where that goes. But we ain't gonna do that tonight because I know that's gonna take y'all on a whole nother. We're gonna be on a whole nother astro plane with that one. Because we have to really start addressing these issues, especially around this pandemic. What advice would you give to people about the vaccine? You know, what advice would you give people?
I would tell people, see, I haven't had it because, you know, right now I have the antibodies. And so they told me not to get it. But I'm telling you, if I had not had the antibodies.
You were told not to. So you were told not to get it because of the situation, because of your medical situation.
No, that's me because I have the antibodies and the plasma. So basically, the scientists and the doctors told me that I have a better shield up than you all who have the vaccine because I'm at 100% with the monoclonal antibodies and the plasma. Whereas Pfizer or Moderna is at 97%, both of those, and Johnson, is at 68 something percent. My system is much better right now. But if it were not, I would have been the first one, I promise you, in line trying to get the vaccine because I want to live and not die. And I just think we can't live in fear. So I don't want to tell anybody to just stay at home now because you still got to live. I mean, we have to live. But you got to live responsibly. Being in the middle of a crowd, people all over you, back to back, without masks, that's not responsible. But you can still go to a restaurant. I would be careful. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in there with 200 people. But there are restaurants that have patios. There are restaurants where you can spread out. Take your mask off where you're eating. When you're not eating, put it back on. So you got to live. But in order to do that, you got to be vaccinated. Unless you are, Jesus. I mean, you're walking on water. I mean, I'm trying to understand what's happening that you think that you cannot get COVID. I don't understand. Vaccines to me work. So I had to even tell my son this, my eldest son, because he in that woke generation. A lot of people think they're so woke. I said, you're going to be so woke, you're going to be dead. You're going to be dead. All of y'all running around, with conspiracy stuff. And I think it's a group that they target on social media with all this nonsense because what are you talking about? I know the United States government has not historically done right by Black folk. We know that. We don't have to even go way back in history. We can go to Tuskegee. We know that. But what we do know is that vaccines help and they make a difference. And I said, that's why you haven't experienced a pandemic up until now. This is why you don't see massive outbreaks of chicken pox and measles and all that stuff, because you all were immunized as children. I was immunized as a child. A lot of things that people experience, we don't have to go through it now because of immunization. So for us to just be like, oh my God, we're going to have 3 eyes and our legs and arms and limbs are going to fall off. I mean, come on. But what we do know is COVID was killing a lot of people, period. And who wants to die? I mean, we need to, anything that should die should be this pandemic.
And people, and let me throw this out there. The people that have died from COVID did not die peacefully. And they did not die in loving ways. They did not. The death of someone with COVID is solemn and painful because they are in isolation. I was told my godmother died on video camera because that was the only way people
you couldn't go see
with her, because you couldn't go in there with her. She was venom, but they put a video camera in her face for us to watch her take her last breath. Who wants to die that way? And then her funeral had to be closed casket because the funeral home said, no, we can't open it because she had COVID. So it's not a peaceful celebratory moment. These are some painful moments that people are dying in. And that's the real truth. It's not glorified. It's nothing glorious about it. It's nothing to shout about. It's painful because it's sad. It is solemn. This is grief at its worst. And we really have to start addressing the issue, because now we have to also deal with how do we address the after grief? Because there are people that have not had an opportunity to grieve over this past year because of COVID, because I know in New Jersey, funerals were limited to 10 people. Most funerals were limited to 10 people in New Jersey and in some other places.
And so how do
families grieve?
And in the beginning, they were cremating a lot of bodies. And so people felt like they didn't even have a choice in the situation. I mean, because, it was kind of like the plague for real. Like, oh my God, we got to cremate these bodies. And so this has been horrific. And then we've had civil rights leaders die, like Dr. Joseph Lowry died. We couldn't even celebrate him in mass like we would have wanted to because of COVID. I mean, even if you didn't die from COVID, the situation itself took away the dignity that we had.
That's right.
Which Bishop talked about earlier in depth. It took it away. I mean, this is horrible. And we are as a country grieving. We are experiencing traumatic stress. And I know that we're going to need more mental health professionals going forth, because the PTSD is real, and the number is going to be high and alarming, because a lot of us are walking around now with anxiety as though we have been in the middle of a war, because this is a war. It has been a war for the American people. So we're going to have to deal with that.
And one of the things you had mentioned about what would the advice be around the vaccination for me personally, when I took the vaccination, I did exactly, I took it at Emory, and Emory gave you this card. I got vaccinated because, and put a blank. And in my blank, I wrote, because I want to live. That's the bottom line. The bottom line is, I want to live. And secondly, we are talking and having a conversation for people of faith. We know what it is to call up faith and to step out on faith. Most of our communities, we know about that. We know about having to step out on faith and claim something that we couldn't quite afford, but we will believe in God for it. We know about stepping out on faith. Many of us, I remember growing up in the sanctified church where people would testify about, I didn't have no gas in my car, but I wanted to make it to the house of prayer. So I drove on fumes in faith and I made it. Praise the Lord. That same process that you use to step out on faith, to get that new car, to get that new house, to make it to the car, that new boo, all of that, to finish that degree, open that business, call up that same faith in you to live while you sit in that chair and have somebody stick your arm, because faith is faith, regardless of how you apply it and where you practice it at. You use that same faith. The fear of rejection, the fear of getting things taken from you didn't stop you from stepping out, getting that new car and all those new other things. Don't allow fear to stop you. So I got the vaccination, the first shot. I had a little bit of soreness, but it felt exactly like the soreness that I get when I get the flu shot every year.
Exactly.
That day I was a little lethargic, but by the 24-hour period, now others in my congregation had massive reactions, and I understand that. But for me, it was not the case. My second shot, after I got I'm 2 weeks out from my second shot now. And my second shot, I had absolutely no side effects. What I did get, and here is the truth, what I did get that was unexpected and unscheduled was a better sleep. I promise you, I got a sense of relief after I took the vaccination that I didn't count on. I didn't realize how much anxiety I was carrying around by saying, when am I going to get it? Or am I going to get it? Or how is this going to affect me? But there was a calming that came from me once I got past that second vaccination, that I realized, you know what? Based on the science, even if I get it now, the odds are against me dying or having to be hospitalized. I got more peace when my mama got it. And those elderly people in my family that I love got it. Because for me, I could rest a little bit. So I do think that you do get something, but you may not get what you're thinking about. You get peace.
Because I got it too. And,
Lord.
I was more stressed, and this is just me. I was more stressed about finding out my mom was going to be able to get a shot. Because I said, I know eventually I'm going to be able to get one because I'm a school teacher. So they're going to give it to me. But I said, this is my mother. I need to make sure my mom is able to get a shot. And I was stressing. And stress is real, and I'm glad we're talking about anxiety. I see my good friend, Dr. Brian Jones, is in the chat. And I know he's excited because we're talking about mental health, which is his baby. But listen, I was putting anxiety on myself because I'm wondering, will my mom be able to get a vaccination? Will my cousin Tootie, who has lupus, be able to get, and is a breast cancer survivor, will she be able to get this vaccination? Because they're not school teachers, so they're not on a priority list, But when they were able to walk into a clinic unexpectedly, a clinic that had no appointments, I was relieved, and they got their shot before me, but I was just relieved that they were able to get theirs. And so I understand what you're saying about that peace of mind, because I too was able to sleep. I was able to sleep and rest because my mother got her first and she has had her second shot. And so I was like, whew, okay, now I feel all right, because they mean a lot to me. So now that when I get mine on Wednesday, I'm like, okay, go ahead, stick me in the arm, let's do this. Because I'm like you, the first shot I had the sore arm, and that was really all that I experienced. And so I always tell people, we have to realize what side effects one person gets is not automatically something you're going to experience, because this thing is based on your own personal body chemistry, your DNA. Your body is going to determine that. For example, people took Allegra when Allegra came out as an allergy medicine. Who knew I couldn't take Allegra? I wound up with a respiratory infection, and it's a small side effect printed on the side of the box. I caught a respiratory infection because I took the allergy medicine. Everybody else didn't, but I did. And so I look at this pandemic and this vaccination the same way. We have to be responsible. If your children get vaccinated for all this other stuff, we got to trust the science somewhere. We have to trust science somewhere. People keep bringing up the Tuskegee experiment. I'm like, don't you know, as a result of Tuskegee, as a result of the mistreatment of those people and people like that, now any kind of study has to go through a review board. The IRB studies have to be approved and authorized. That you have to detail every aspect of your study. So we can't just study and practice on people now as they did back then. This is a whole different generation and we're in a whole different place now. And we have to get people out of, because I tell one of my cousins, I ain't gonna lie, brought up Tuskegee. I said, well, you wasn't even alive at Tuskegee. So why are you bringing up, you wasn't even alive. I know you wasn't alive because I wasn't. And I'm older than you. So you tell me about Tuskegee, that don't have nothing to do with you. The world has changed from that, and so we are in a different place, and we have to see that. Thank you, Brian. I see you over there, Brian Jones. Have we politicized this pandemic too much? Yeah.
That's just a guess. I mean, we know we have. I mean, this is why we haven't gotten as far as we should have been, because it was politicized in the very beginning. The Republicans felt like it was fake, and for whatever reason, I don't even know how they got on that mantra that the Democrats were using against them when it was a global pandemic. That was the craziest, most insane thing I had ever heard from them. I thought they were, had problems, but I knew they had problems once they started doing that. Because how do you politicize a global
I couldn't figure that out.
That makes no sense. I mean, I just got through fussing tonight on News Nation. I think it's News Nation. One of the Republican stations that I was just on, and I'll tell them that the whole thing is just retarded. Well, no, okay. Oh God, Lord Jesus.
We take that back.
I take it back. I take it back. So okay, I snatch it back. I'm sorry. Please don't call me and say I said the wrong word. I'm not talking about people. Lord, it's time for me to get off. It's late.
We're not using that word as a negative.
But that's a bad. And see, and I knew it immediately when it came out. That's why I said I'm sorry.
People would take that word, and she said, no. That's not what it means.
Yeah, I do think there is some level of politicization. I get tongue tied on that. It's politicized, wearing of masks, right? But I've also watched so many things lately be politicized that I just never thought, like violence and aggression and discrimination and all of these things. Like I don't. What seems to be black and white issues. If you want to live, put a piece of cloth over your face and stay socially distant from somebody. I mean, it really ain't rocket science. The truth is, I mean, there are whole denominations and movements that have been birthed because of putting cloth over heads. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just telling the truth. There are whole movements.
But see, you never had the experiences because you're a man. But I'm telling you, even to get communion, I've gone to church. They slap a doily on my head, and one time I went to church and I wasn't even suspecting that I had my head down and I felt something. I didn't know what was because can't be putting stuff on me and I don't know what you're doing at that moment.
So
That was the
putting
old
cloth
AME
on
way,
us
baby.
is
No,
not
wait a
new.
minute.
There are whole denominations, when you fall out in the spirit, they put a piece of cloth over you. Like
Right.
putting cloth over you is not new for church folk. I don't understand why putting a piece of cloth over your mouth is such an issue. We have experience with throwing cloth around. Like, come
I
on,
know
people.
it. When I sit in the pulpit, depending on whose church I am, they're gonna come put some on my legs.
Exactly.
Because the people can't control themselves in the congregation. Because why are you looking at my legs anyway? You need to be looking to the Lord and praying. Give me your Bible. Get in the Word. Get in the Word. That's what you need to be doing. Get in the Word.
But it's true, and we've made it more an issue than it should have been.
You bring the cloths out there.
Yeah, right. When we really should be making an issue of, it's about lives, it's about humanity, it's about living and living healthy and living well, and not about, are you the elephant or the donkey? It shouldn't matter if you red or blue. Life is for all, and all of us deserve to live. All of us deserve to live, and we have to remember that it's a life issue and not a political issue, unfortunately. So where do we go from here? You know, where do we go from here? We still got to make it through this. We got to make it to herd immunity.
That's where we go from here.
Immunity,
and have conversations like this.
And here is something I am hoping for. Okay. I am hoping that the Biden administration, and I've been on calls where that process has started. I'm hoping that the Biden administration and even our state officials partner with Black churches and start setting up vaccination sites in our churches, places that we honor and places that we don't have that fear to go into. I'm hoping that's next, because I think that is the next great frontier for Black people. My great-grandmama and great-great-grandmama and them, they might not ever feel comfortable going to a CVS to get a shot.
That's right.
But they will trust that church that they have been members of for 42 years.
That's right.
Where they help lay bricks at. You know, they will go to the fellowship hall of those buildings and sit and take a shot, because when they don't quite trust the process, they trust the institution. And I'm hoping that that's the next leg of what we do. We partner with community health builders and people that have some institutional credential and credit, and maximize on that.
You know, and thank you for saying it. And I would dare say this as one of, you know, as we're going to the end, that institutions have to earn back the trust of people. Because I hear what you're saying, that the people will get the vaccination at places that they trust. But as the Black church, we also have to go back and earn the trust of the people. And so it's a call to arms for all of us as faith community leaders. We have some work still to do. We are not finished. I think, as it has been said tonight, that the pandemic is not over. This is not the time to go out into mass groups irresponsibly and uncover, but we have some work to do. And so to every faith leader, I encourage you to partner with your political leaders, partner with your House of Rep members and your senators and whoever, your mayors, your city councils, and make it known what you need for your congregations. We have to make it known, and we have to be involved in the politics of this, because they politicized our lives. They politicized our experiences, and we have to take our lives back and make our voices heard in politics and on every level. And so to my friends, I promised y'all an hour, and I love you, and I appreciate you for your expertise, for your wisdom, and just thank you for being my friends. I appreciate you for being my friends.
An hour, and we're
and we thank you for the invitation and for taking the lead on having this conversation as well.
Pastor D, I owe you dinner, I promise you.
Yes, I'll be looking forward to it too. I'm looking forward.
As soon as you're willing to get together with people, you just call me, and then I come back down to Atlanta, take you to dinner. I'll be there this weekend.
Okay, so I'll be ready.
Boom. But I appreciate all of you. For those that were joining us through Facebook, we thank you. We hope we were able to impart something into you and share something that was useful to you. We encourage each and every one of you, do what you can, get the vaccine, do what you have to do, because it's about your health, the health and lives and sanity of your loved ones. Pastors, faith leaders, get involved. Make sure you start speaking truth to power and also speaking facts with your faith to conquer our fears. Thank you all so much for joining us. I appreciate you. Have a great and blessed night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Where's my little thing? Where's my lead studio thing? My glasses on. Look, I can't even see. Okay, you play too much, but I'll be